everyone. Welcome. This is the Oracle Autonomous AI Database Learning Lounge. I am Marco Senesiva, part of the product management team for Autonomous Database. And today we have yet another great session. We're going to have a session dedicated to basically data security and resilience in the Autonomous AI Database. So Michelle Malcher, she joins us today, and she's going to be talking about, how the AI workloads, right, require really a layered security, and she's going to explain how automated patching actually makes it all better for Autonomous Database. She's going to talk also about the Oracle Deep Data Security, some details on the unified auditing, Oracle Data Safe, right, and security monitoring as well. And she also is going to be talking about reducing the operational risk, right, with the converged platform. Also, an option that we have for customers, early patching, right, for development and things like that. And finally, she's going to mention, basically the consistent security patching across multi-cloud, right? So across all of the platforms where the Autonomous AI Database runs, right? Throughout the session, we're going to have product managers looking at your questions. So if you have questions, make sure to type them in the Q&A section in Zoom, okay? And then we're going to share links with you guys through chat. And the recording is going to be made available very likely next week, early next week, right? Or late this week in the link that you see there. Okay. And speaking of links, here are some links I'm sharing with you guys right now, some links in chat. Okay. So that you can find us, ask your questions, connect with us, and then learn more about Autonomous AI Database as well, right? Using our live labs. And then we have more than 30, I think 37 live labs at this point. And then we're always adding more, right? And more, there. And then join us, especially on, we have an Oracle developers Slack workspace where, it's free. You can just join, click on that link and then search for Oracle Autonomous Database. You can ask your question there to us, right? Okay, so without further ado, thank you very much, Michelle, for joining us today. I know we have a lot of topics to cover. So again, thank you very much for joining, and take it away.
Thank you, Marcus. I don't know why you said I had too much information in my slides, so minus 200 slides. I've cut it down to a few to hopefully get through some of this topic today. We won't cover it all, but hopefully give you some good areas to be excited about and start to learn what is going on with security in Autonomous AI Database. And thank you. All right, so let's dive in because as Marcos hinted, I have a lot of material to cover. All right, so we have to start off with just quickly talking about what is Autonomous AI Database. Because we have Oracle 26 AI, we have databases on different platforms. We have a fully managed database with Autonomous AI Database. And so what ends up happening is it continues to self-manage, self-secure, work on performance. And so there's a lot of automation that we built into Autonomous and a lot of features that we've made available in Autonomous Database. And so that means the Lakehouse, the data tools, there's Data Studio, different ways of working with the database that is available. So you have this one place where you have those different workloads with JSON, vector, graph, spatial, all the different workloads available. And then, of course, we built in a bunch of AI capabilities into Autonomous. So we have a natural language to SQL, RAG, and even agents and MCP server available with that. And because this is cloud native, it is elastic and scalable, and it's built on a bunch of the cloud technology to be able to use. So you have not only the cloud and the security there, but you also have this layered approach to the database and the services that you have. And of course, then this is deployed in any cloud, right? We have on OCI, we have Oracle database at Azure, Oracle database at Google, or Oracle database at AWS. So you can work with autonomous AI database in the cloud platform where you need it. So those I thought are important to talk about because everything else that I'm going to talk about applies to where you're running your database. It doesn't matter if it's in Google, AWS, OCI. This is all part of what we provide as a managed service with Autonomous AI database. So with the focus on security, what does Autonomous AI database bring in? And the idea is to really keep it simple and on by default. Instead of having to go out and configure TDE, transparent data encryption, or making sure that your client is encrypted from end to end, we make sure that you have all of that enabled and on by default. You can't disable certain security features that are part of this. That means data is encrypted at rest and in transit, including encrypted and immutable backups, infrastructure level network isolation, and fully managed firewalls. In addition, we have separation of duties with granular access controls and policies that allow you to break out those roles into different levels of access and controls across the tenancy and databases. We have mandatory policies that are in place with always-on auditing. We're capturing some mandatory areas for compliance, such as logon failures and modification to accounts, such as privileges. You have access to the audit logs to review. And there are limits to access since there are no SysDBA system or system operator access. Of course, you can add your own audit policies to capture. So in talking about what we need to do for adding policies and where those areas are for security, we look at what we just mentioned, what we have with the built-in always-on security and autonomous AI database, and we look at some of the reasons for some of these breaches with unencrypted data, security patches not being applied, administrator snooping around, right? We have security configuration drift that changes in our application, or in our database, or in the configuration of the settings and users, those areas where we have maybe even unmanaged privilege users. So what we do, Autonomous AI Database addresses that first group. We take care of those areas where we have data encryption, security patching, and then we have some areas that the customer has to take care of, that you all have to take care of, because we don't grant access to your data. We don't have access to your data. So it's the customer responsibility to manage and look at the audit logs, manage and look at the user access. But what's even better is Autonomous AI Database provides you the tools to make that even easier. So when we're looking at what the security managed by Oracle, we have the network security monitoring in place, our OS and platform security, because there's no even access to that, and the database patches and upgrades. And so you have this separation of duties that are already built in with this configuration of this managed service. And of course, I talk about encryption all the time. It's one of those easiest things to do is turn on the encryption and not worry about your data at rest or in transit. And then we're going to look at a little bit ways that we made it easier for you to manage those users, grant the access that is needed, even sensitive data discovery. That's all part of the application, all the tools that we're providing for you to use with your Autonomous AI database. But there's a small little thing that we may have been talking about for a little while, right? About AI changing everything. And so what we have is, AI, and with the Oracle Autonomous AI database, we have AI designed for data, right? We're bringing the AI to the data. End of data chaos, when we're able to work with things in the tools and working with the database with a lakehouse workload type and the data tools. We have easy ways to connect data without moving it around. And we also end some data lock-in because we are more open and interoperable with our Lakehouse platform, and then ending that data risk. Because as I say that AI is really changing everything, what we've talked about as one of the higher priorities is actually getting those security patches in place. So what is happening now when we have those quarterly patches that come out, right? And we needed to be applied. And Marcus is going to put a couple links in there about patching and a couple blogs that have come out about patching. But what these AI models are actually able to do is go out there and start to find these vulnerabilities and create exploits. So if we're not staying up to date on our patching, we're really opening ourselves up for some of these vulnerabilities that will be out there. So with AI, it's now easier to do this. It's fast, it's automated, and of course, this is more accessible for how these you used to be a more highly skilled expert that is able to work with those patches, and now it's becoming a lot easier for people to use. And so this is really posing a new threat in how we are handling getting security patches in place and everything else once we ship that. So we almost have to pass that out and get ready to apply the patches. Well, the great news is Autonomous AI Database applies these patches automatically for you. So there are no actions from the customer that is needed. And these are done in online fashion. So there's zero downtime. And it's a full stack patching that happens. So you're always up to date with these security fixes and these patches that come out. Now, I threw this little information from one of our customers, eliminating 6 to 12 hours of just downtime. That doesn't include any of the preparation, the rollout of the patch, and applying the patches. That's just including some of the downtime when they switched from on-prem databases to autonomous AI database, because all of that was handled for them. And so, especially in this world of AI, being able to use the automated patching, the regular patching of autonomous, and allowing us to be able to uh, have our system always up to date with the latest fixes, you're reducing a huge risk that is out there. So even as being a DBA in my past and working on patching and doing that, you still sort of panic of, what do you mean it's automatically going to apply these patches? What do I need to test? What do I need to go out there and do? Well, the great news is that there is data that is, there's ways that this is actually allowing you to um, have an opportunity to apply early patches for test and dev systems. So these early patches are actually rolled out a week prior to production patches. And there's different event notifications that are available for these patching. And so now you have different ways of working with your environment to be able to validate some of your applications and have it in your test environments to go out there and do that. And I'm actually going to show you real quick here. Let me not give away the other piece of my presentation. But let me show you. All right, with patching of this, we have then different, I'm in the Autonomous AI Database console in OCI, and these types of patch levels and maintenance are available again in all the clouds for you to be able to use. And you can see here I have maintenance with a patch level of regular. So this database is going to be on a regular schedule. You have history of when the next patch in which the next maintenance is. And if I want, if this is a test environment, or I can clone my production and create it as an early patch. And then the early patch, setting it as early patch, and depending on that, it's just going to go through the back end and make sure that it's part of that early patch environment. And that will then change that to an early patch. So it's easy as that to get those patches earlier and be able to use that as part of your test system. So even here you saw the different areas that we have with a regular patch, early patch. You can switch back from early patch to regular patch, but you have to wait that cycle of the regular patch being applied before you can actually change it back to the regular patch. And then you have the history, so you can see all the data, all the patches that have been applied over the time. So with the early patch cycle, you have validations. You can use that in your test and dev environments and be able to um, have that validated as the patches are being applied automatically for you. Again, automatic patching is a beautiful thing, saves you time, saves you a lot of effort in doing that. And so you can actually go through and work on that patching. So what is this doing? When we even roll out these patches, I know we're so used to our phones updating, maybe even our computers updating automatically and doing that. What we haven't been used to in the past is our databases actually updating because we have a lot of mission critical applications running on them. But what we're doing on Autonomous is really allowing for that continuous validation of every patch release. We run tens of thousands of automated tests against that. We have dozens of production-like environments where we're running. You can have a production-like environment where you're actually running in your early patch to be able to validate and make sure that those critical fixes are available before your production rollout. And then we have this rapid regression detection with real-time monitoring. So if there's something that pops up, there's advanced anomaly detection that identifies that, and we can actually pause the production patch before making sure those regressions are taken care of before we roll that out into production. So we're mitigating a lot of that risk in automating these patches, validation of the rollout, testing for regressions, all the tests that we're running against it, and making it an environment that makes it easier for you to continue with online patching and not having to worry about all those pieces that go into applying a patch, testing, validating, and then rolling it out to production on your own. I know I have like 10 slides on patching, but it really is an area where with the AI landscape that we have today and the fixes coming out in a patch release, that AI tools can really start to find those exploits a lot faster. So if we are not staying current with those patches, we're really running into risks in our environment. So that end-to-end automation for the patch validation, right? If you turn on your patch, you create a early patch database from a clone from your production. You have a replay option of your workloads against the patched environment. And all of these results are analyzed and automatically identified regressions that are there. And it then generates service requests and recommendations when they're detected. So we're working on that for each patch cycle to make sure that the patch has been validated and being able to go out there. Okay. All right. So great. So patching you don't have to worry about, right? That is on Oracle's plate for the managed service. You set up your environments with an early patch for your test. You're running your applications against that. Things are automatically being detected and validated for you as you go forward. And then the release of the patches happen and you are up to date on your security, which helps so much with that AI landscape. But it is your responsibility to handle users and roles and privileges, making sure that you have the right access to the databases, and making sure those users are using the right permissions. And so, with being on the different environments, we have different policies that we've set up. Being this a managed service, you can actually have different groups that have access to certain databases that you have, different compartments, what they can actually manage, what they can actually look at. There's a lot of new IAM policies that actually broke for the different APIs and managing your database that allow certain actions to happen. So if you want to get to a least privilege, you actually start at some of the policies that are there for your users and groups that can have access to those databases. We have different roles that are defined that you can leverage and use to go through and make sure that you have some examples of those roles for depending on what they should do. Our admin user is basically our sysdba user. In our autonomous AI database, they have purpose of doing data management and managing your environment. So that's the one that you're handing to your DBAs to handle. There's a DW role for database users, which is useful for Data Studio. 26 AI privileges, so part of autonomous. There's schema privileges, read-only users, and developer DB developer roles that are there. And we make it easy to manage these roles in autonomous AI database with obviously some GUI tools. All your SQL Plus still works to manage these roles, grant these actions that you need to be able to do. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we recently did a learning lounge on DataSafe. And DataSafe is a great tool to be able to use to manage those users, those changes in, and know exactly what permissions they have. So like I said, it's your responsibility for those users, but we're giving you tools to make that easier that are included with Autonomous AI Database. So DataSafe not only will capture your audit logs, but it will capture your database configuration and changes in your security posture. And it helps you manage your users of what users actually have certain privileges and what users actually have setting up, making sure we have least privileged in there. All right, so that's a great tool to be able to use. It also works on passwords of when people have actually logged in and different changes to users. The other tool that we have included with Autonomous AI Database is Oracle Database Vault. And this is to really help you allow certain access. So your admin and activity and tasks, but it blocks the admins from the data itself. Your authorized application usage, but maybe blocks some credential misuse. And then, of course, it's enforcing some security policies, and it limits that errors and mistakes. So you have access to these realms. And this is included with Autonomous AI Database, but you just need to enable it. And it is part of the kernel to be able to make sure that that is performing well. With that, I already said that DataSafe had auditing available to you. We're using Unified Audit. That is really your only option in 26 AI. So your unified auditing is on by default. It's automatically tracking login failures. It's capturing your privileged users and your changes to structures and tables. You can add additional policies to monitor and audit other activity. I'm going to answer this question because I saw it pop up. Database Vault is free with Autonomous AI Database. I had to answer that because the DataSafe is free with Autonomous AI Database. Automated patching is free with Autonomous AI Database. And this is one of the big things of being able to use this managed service and to be able to audit. All right. Being on OCI, of course, then there's also CloudGuard, which helps you monitor some of your additional security posture and your infrastructure that you have, some of your policies that you have, some of those administrative pieces, gives you also additional logging that's available with Autonomous Database. So managing those users, right? We look at how we can define authentication and authorization, right? We know we've always logged on with a database user, database password, and we're good to go. We also know that just the database password is a risk, right? Someone compromises that password. You don't have those additional information. So just having a username and password is not enough these days. So we have multi-factor authentication built in to the database. That's available from 19C to 26AI. And then we have authorization through roles and privileges that are in the database. We also have external authentication methods, so you can manage your users locally. So if you or centrally, I'm sorry, centrally. And so when you can use OCI IAM and the different groups that are there and manage that. Microsoft Active Directory with Entra IDs and being able to manage your groups and then map those to database roles where you can actually set the permissions, Kerberos. So those are built in natively to the database and Autonomous AI database. And we've just recently added for database actions and Data Studio ways that you can use different identity providers with AWS, GCP, and Okta, which I am going to demo for you here in a little bit. But to talk about the multi-factor authentication, right? This is important for those local database users. You can look this up in the documentation, but there was recently a package or API that was released that you can actually clone admin, right? Admin has a lot of privileges, sysdba, basically your DBA admin, and it's a shared account. So you can actually clone your admin user, and then as that new user that's assigned to an individual DBA, you can turn on multi-factor authentication for that user. So when they go to log in, they have to supply that second factor. I don't know why my slides are doing that. But then this reduces that risk. We have different configurations that are set up for OCI IAM as well as Cisco Duo, and that's just your authenticator app that you're using. You have this app that is set up to be able to do that. And then in Autonomous AI database, you need to use the DBMS MFA admin package to register that user. If you're doing things in a different database, this is part of the 26AI and 19C that you can actually add that, alter your user and add that second factor to that user. So I'll walk through those steps in just a second. But what's important to understand here is the fact that we're configuring a mobile authenticator, which is different than your identity providers, right? So our MFA is specifically here for local database users. And so there's a configuration step. Once you configure your OCIAM authenticator or your Cisco Duo authenticator for your users, then it makes it real easy to add that to any of your users in the database. You only have to configure that authenticator once, and then you have that ability to register your users with the MFA. External authentication is a little bit different in the fact that you're registering your identity provider with the database. And once you register that IDP with the database, then you can set up and use the centrally managed users. Now I'm having the tools showing here because that's what's new, right? You can see the different identity providers that are part of that with using database actions in Data Studio. But native to the database, we also have ways to integrate OCI, IAM, and Azure Entra IDs. There is something to be careful of as you're working through, even when I'm getting to the deep data security part of this, but as you're working through those different areas, you want to be careful of actually how you've configured your external authentication because deep data security has a way to do that. External authentication has a way to do that. And if you can see here in my database where I'm logged in, I'm enabling OCI IAM. And when I use this force equals true, I'm overriding any existing settings that may have been there. There's different parameters that I hope that we've documented well of what to include and make sure that once you configured this external authentication, then you can use it for things like deep data security and your external authentication. Again, this is separate from the MFA and how you're using it, but that's one way to set it up. So if you see here, if I come here and I actually grab my identity provider, you can see that I'm set up for OCI IAM right now. You can only have one identity provider at a time. So you need to decide, am I using Azure? Am I using Okta? Am I using OCI IAM? And then that would apply to the different ways of authenticating to the database and providing ways to map your users that way. All right, so I'm going to continue to show you a few different ways of configuring things. Again, if I try to enable external authentication for a different, I get an error message. I should get an error message. I didn't get an error message. Oh, because I have true. Um, that's why. Hold on. True will overwrite any existing details, so you don't want to do that. So that's why I'm making sure that you are clear on what you're authenticating and having that one provider that's there. So if I have OCI IAM or Azure already set up, then I need to make sure that I have that enabled. I'm going to use force and it's going to overwrite whatever is there. So that runs successfully at that point. All right. When we have the other identity providers, so we have enable external authentication for Azure and OCI IAM that are native to the database. So those are going to be enabled in the database. Because the others are just with tools, we just have to really register that identity provider with the database. And so all of this is in the document. Marcos already put the links out there. The documentation goes through all these examples and provides you good information. So with things like AWS and Okta, what you're doing is you're going out and configuring your application or your database for those different identity providers, and you're bringing back your client ID and secret as part of your identity provider registration, and then you can use those users as part of the tools. What you might already be familiar with is when we create a user, it's identified globally. So our Azure user, you map that to a user in the database, and then you grant all those permissions to your user that's in the database. So this is really only handling your authentication, and your authorizations are based in the database that you have. Please ignore that version mismatch message. Our ORDS team is working on providing you some wonderful new features. And so that has come up and that could be ignored. pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, actually. I know it's distracting. All right. What's important is, okay, so now I've created a user, right? I have my user here, and I need to grant it certain permissions because there is no connection to the database without any privileges to that user. So I need to be able to at least create a session. So if I'm going in, I'm logging in, I want to be able to create a session. And then when I'm using tools with that, there's one more permission it needs, and it needs to enable the schema for being able to log in to ORDS and being able to use the tools with that. So the other role that is needed if you are going to use Data Studio tools as part of this, again, all these tools, database actions, Data Studio are included with Autonomous AI Database. You need to grant the role of DW role or something similar to that to be able to have those permissions. Okay, cool. All right, that is part of my user demo. I do want to walk you through a simple screen of actually logging in. So what I did was I went to what is nice about this is I only need the URL for data tools, right? I don't need to actually log into the OCI console. I just need that URL to go directly to tools. And now you'll see here we have a username and password that is your database username and password, so I can log in with a local user, or I can sign on with SSO. What SSO gets me is connections to all the tools at the same time, so I don't have to worry about that. But it also gets me the identity providers. So again, up here is the local user, database user that I can sign in with, or I can click on OCI IAM. I give it my tenancy. And then, of course, you could be in default domains, different domains, however you've configured your identity provider. And then, of course, then your user that you would sign in on. And first time typing the password, it actually worked. That's beautiful. So this MFA is part of my OCI IAM credentials. So same thing that you would have for Azure, you would have maybe your second factor as part of this, and then you would approve that. But this is all the external identity providers. So depending on how you've configured your different identity providers, what's needed to log in, because it's going out to like Azure and getting that information. It's going out to Okta to get that identity and information. And it's using that to be able to log in. So now you can see I have access to the SQL. I have access to Data Studio. I am logged in as my Test global user. So that's the identity that I've logged in. And if I didn't have the right permission set, I could see this, but I couldn't access it. So that would tell me, and also here, AI profiles, another story, another time. But those are set up for you to be able to connect. So if I go to my SQL window, what I want to do real quick is just show you how this identity is coming through, because now you're able to see that identity come through, and I have my current user, Test Global, and you see that client ID. So you have auditing. I know exactly who is logged in, and that passes all the way through with the different activity to the database. All right, so that's external authentication. With the MFA, I want to show you that briefly here. Again, I have my login. I'm going to go directly to tools. Let me do it this way. Here I have my user. You can see here I have a user that I'm going to log in as, and it's just going to end up hanging there and waiting. And it's waiting for me to actually go through and approve my connection. So it will sit there and hang and wait and do that. So it's actually going to my OCI IAM authenticator. And then as soon as I hit approve, then I get signed into the database. That works in tools and that works in SQL Plus and works in the different tools, VS Code and other tools that you may be using to connect to the database. So now I'm connected to the database and I can create a window and then I would see, I can see the same information of who I'm connected as, which should be my local user that I have. Okay, now it's happy with me. Maybe it's not happy with me. Oh, this is a 19C database. And what am I missing? I'm missing from Dual. So going back to 19C as well as 26AI, you have that option to be able to connect to the database using a multi-factor authentication. Same with the external authentication. It's available in 19C and 26AI. All right, so enough of the user demos and getting logged in. This really is helping you being able to manage your users in a centrally way, being able to grant those permissions. We're trying to make it easier for you to do your side of security and actually looking at it. There's a few things I'm going to include in the slides, but skip over because remember, I wanted to talk about AI changing everything. And I saw Rich has joined our conversation here. He's one of the PMs for deep data security. And why is this important? Well, we just talked about centrally managed users, right? And being able to log in through different identity providers and having that context. I was showing you the context of that user being passed all the way through. And what ends up happening is we have all these wonderful AI tools now, your agents, your existing analytics, right? Your machine learning applications, direct access to the database. And you need to know who you are to make sure you have the right permissions and everything all the way through into your data. So putting that grant on the data allows your agents to be able to run against your data, but use your security that you have assigned to you. So if I'm not granted access to certain areas, I'm not going to be able to, the agent's not going to be able to go off and grab data that I don't have access to. So this is really looking at it from a perspective of making sure that data is secure. As we're using different models against the data, we're using different agents and how we're working with it. And we really want to have that identity attached to the data. So we know that the person who is running the agent, right? Because agents may run under different privileges. They may come from someplace else. But once you access the database or the data information, you need to have that agent or that user all the way through so you know which access that they have. And this gives you a bunch of different declarative properties. It's almost like attributes, role access, as opposed to just the role access to the database. So when you're looking at this, this really is giving you the least privilege for agentic AI. And being able to do your RAG searches and vector searches, all the capabilities that are built into the database. You've now attached your identity to these end users, so you have the context of your users and what data you're allowed to access. Now, I'm going to run out of time for a demo, but Marcos has put in there beautiful information about deep data security, including live labs that allows you to walk through these examples and see what is going on, and some YouTube videos to talk more about this. If you have been doing security for a while and managing your users, you may have used something called virtual private database. And virtual private database is sort of like this, right? You're actually adding the context of the user and limiting access of the data based on the user that's coming in. But you are still logging in, and that context of that user is what's against getting checked with, where your agents may be coming in a different way. And so as your agents or as your AI workloads are coming through, you have that context of this end user that is mapped to data. So it's really allowing you only to really protect your AI data and what is being used based on who you are in the database. So that end user context is established, and that is used to enforce these policies and the authorizations that you have. So your user may go out, run these different applications. It authenticates against your identity provider. It provides your tokens and your connection to the database, and it knows who you are as that user, even if you may be using different agents and different AI models to be able to connect to the database outside of the data. So where you've seen that we showed a couple examples of looking at sys context, but we actually have an or end user context. So that's providing you this context all the way through to the data. And that's what you're leveraging to do these data grants. So I can actually create these grants on views, on tables, and managing it that way and setting that end user context. So I know as the person coming in is going to have the right permissions on that data. So this is the responsibility, right, of all of you who are using the data or managing the data to be able to make sure that the context or the who needs to access that is set up. But again, we're giving those tools to actually create these data grants and be able to make it easy for you to do once instead of in all the agents, and making sure all the applications have the right security models and everything else. And then what if you have a rogue agent that goes out there and decides to go and just scan all your data? Well, because of your end user, you actually have that set up to be able to have that data grant based on that user that is coming in. So you can see that this is set up for data grants. You can do a select on all columns except a column in the table. You can allow for different updates based on that you actually on salary here for the managers. And then you have the different attributes that you are associating to make sure that that's the end user context that is coming through. So these column level privileges, these actual where you're getting to that row and column level of the data and actually how that is being set up. And this is enforced at runtime, right? I had examples of this, but honestly, if you go and try the live lab, you're going to get better examples of running through this. We have a select as an employee. You go out there as Emma, and you can only see that particular employee. And then you have, as the manager, you see the people that report into you, right? And that is all based on the context. And so when I go and I use agents to go and basically ask the data, right, with my natural language, or run my agents against it to do different workloads against the data, that end user is going to go all the way through to the end based on those data grants and based on that end user context. Questions? And I know I had a demo, but I'm going to skip that because of time. Are there
Thank
any
you.
good questions out there,
Thank
Marcos?
you Thank you very much, Michelle. Yeah, we've got a few here. One person saying, asking when connecting to AWS if they can use roles and not username and passwords.
So with AWS, yes, you can use when you're connecting to Autonomous AI database, and once you've registered your identity provider there, based on your roles, you map that role to a globally defined user in the database, and then that's what you're using. So you can use your identity in the different identity providers by groups and match that up.
All right. Another one, is it possible to set up views and then give grants to the views which have the subset?
Absolutely, it's possible to do that. You can do data grants on the views even, because that's sort of important. Because let's say you created a view and you thought it was secure, but your agent has permissions to the underlying table. So you would actually create your data grant on those views. So when your user came in from the end user perspective, they would only have access to that view and those columns in that view. Rich, do you want to add anything to that, or did that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
This really is the deep data security part is really basically securing your data at the data level and making sure that user is attached to that, right? So as they go off and do the different AI workloads, we're really looking at securing it. So as AI starts to uh, cause problems with our patching, we've supplied that for you to automatically patch your databases. We have different tools for you to use based on what users and access that they have with DataSafe and your auditing. And then, of course, the deep data security piece that helps you manage those users. And so now, as you have the externally defined users and are able to manage those centrally with groups or individual accounts, however you want to do that, but then putting them in the with data grants, with deep data security, really allow you to secure that data from AI workloads. Is there anything else in the questions that we?
Yeah, there are other questions.
So the data in Snowflake or Databricks, right? There's different ways of working with Snowflake and Databricks data in Autonomous. You can actually link data and start to allow your users to connect to that linked data. And because they're connecting through Autonomous AI database, then you can leverage some of these tools against that. It's almost like against an external table. But going directly to Databricks or directly to Snowflake, that's based on their security that they might have available.
All right, excellent.
So I've been looking at some of these questions coming through. Everything I mentioned apply to on-prem 26 AI. Everything but the patching. Patching, please read the blogs that came out from Vipin on patching. But the external authentication, deep data security, MFA is all available in 26 AI and 19C on-prem. Well, deep data security is 26 AI. But the patching, the automated patching is not part of your on-prem. You need to be able to prepare and get ready for that. Does external authentication apply to Iceberg access? So when I'm using like the data catalog and the access to some of the data studio, where I have different maybe external tables set up, that absolutely can apply to those areas. There are some things on the roadmap that is going to make that even easier. So that's a good question. Unified auditing, there is mandatory policies for logon failures and highly privileged users that can't be turned off. You do not have to monitor or audit additional information, but those really, as part of any compliance, you need to at least monitor the log on and log off and the failures that happen because of those logons. So that is really meeting those compliance regulations. And so it can't be turned off, but you don't have to turn on any more policies.
Excellent. All right, everyone. While we're finishing up with the questions here, I just launched a quick poll to see how you guys are feeling today after so much information, right, about security. Thank you very much, Michelle, for the great session. And then if you guys still have questions, please type them right there in the Q&A. We're still looking at them, okay? In the meantime, again, guys, thank you very much for joining the session. I'm sharing again the basic links on the autonomous database and all the autonomous AI database, Learning Lounge, the different places where you're going to find the recordings, right? And then how to ask your question online as well. And that's it. So if you guys go and find this, basically our main site, you're going to find links. You're going to find the upcoming sessions. You're going to find the replays that contains all the links that we shared with you guys today. Okay. All right. So thank you guys again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michelle. Really appreciate it. And thank you for everyone that joined. I'll be here for a few more minutes. But if you guys have any more questions, please type them there. But if not, again, thank you, and see you guys in the next session. And really appreciate it, Rich, for joining as well.